The handcuffs go on before a single word is spoken. That is the part that stops the lobby cold. Not a confrontation, not a raised voice, not even a warning. Just the sharp, metallic click of steel closing around a man's wrists while his son watches from 4 feet away. A backpack hanging off one small shoulder, his eyes going wide and still, the way a child's eyes go when the world suddenly stops making sense. Darius Vance does not flinch. He stands exactly where he was standing, near the east wall of the Meridian Plaza lobby, beneath a vaulted ceiling of brushed concrete and recessed lighting that costs more per square foot than most people's monthly rent. He is wearing a clean gray work jacket, dark slacks, clean boots. His son Zion, 9 years old and built like a question mark curled in on himself, stands behind him and does not make a sound. The lobby smells like cold marble and money. Floor-to-ceiling glass panels flood the space with mid-morning light that bounces off chrome fixtures and polished stone. Business professionals move through the revolving doors in tailored coats, pulling wheeled bags, holding phones, not looking at anything below their own eye level. A string quartet plays somewhere on the mezzanine level above. The whole building hums with the quiet, insulated confidence of a place that has never once doubted its own importance. Hi viewers, have you ever walked into a room and immediately felt like someone decided you didn't belong there before you even opened your mouth? Drop a yes in the comments if that has ever happened to you. Vivian Castano White does not appear from a hallway. She appears from her private elevator. There is a difference. The doors open at the far end of the lobby with a low, pressurized exhale, and she steps out already in motion. Navy suit, structured lapels, dark hair pinned back with the kind of precision that signals to every person in the room that her time is more valuable than theirs. She is the chief executive officer of Castano Group, a real estate and defense-adjacent consulting firm that occupies the top 6 floors of this building, and every inch of her posture knows it. She does a single sweep of the lobby. Her eyes land on Darius and Zion. She does not pause. She does not ask a question. She does not speak to anyone nearby to clarify the situation. Her chin tilts up by 3 degrees, her arms cross at the chest, and she turns her head toward the 2 plaza security officers near the concierge desk and gives them the look. The quiet, loaded, executive look that people in her position have perfected over years of getting things done without technically saying anything they can be held accountable for later. The officers move. Because that is what happens in buildings like this. Authority does not need to raise its voice. It just needs to redirect its gaze. Darius watches them approach without blinking. His expression does not shift. He does not step back. He does not extend his hands to make it easier. He simply stands still, the way a man stands when he has already run every possible version of this moment in his head and chosen, deliberately, to let it play out exactly this way. Officer Kendall Marsh, the taller of the 2, reaches him first. "Sir, we're going to need you to step to the side with us." Darius does not answer. He glances once at Zion, just once, and gives his son a look that says, without any words at all, "I see you. Stay where you are. Do not be afraid." Then he turns back, extends his wrists, and lets the steel close around them. Vivian watches from across the lobby, arms still crossed, the corner of her mouth carrying the faintest trace of satisfaction. She believes, in this moment, that she has handled something, that she has made a decision that protects the building, the brand, the standard. She has no idea that the man standing in handcuffs in front of her is already memorizing her face, and the cold steel clicks shut, but Darius Vance is smiling. He does not look away from her. That is what unnerves her first. Vivian Castano White has had difficult people removed from her building before. Vendors who wandered past the lobby desk, couriers who lingered too long, disgruntled contractors who raised their voices. In every one of those situations, the person being detained did the same thing. They either argued loudly or they shrank. They got big or they got small. They gave her something to respond to. Darius Vance gives her nothing. He stands between Officers Marsh and DeLuca with his wrists cuffed in front of him, his posture completely unbothered, his breathing even and slow, and his eyes tracking her with the kind of calm, unhurried attention that belongs to someone who is not worried about the outcome of this moment. At all. 9 feet behind him, Zion stands against the east wall. The boy's backpack is still on his shoulders. His hands are loose at his sides. He watches his father the way a student watches a teacher who has promised there is a lesson in this. Terrified, yes, but trusting the structure underneath the fear. Vivian closes the distance between herself and Darius with 3 deliberate steps. She stops close enough to make the interaction feel personal, which is intentional. She has a philosophy about power, and it begins with physical proximity. She looks him up and down once, the way someone inventories an object they are about to discard. "This is a private commercial complex," she says. Her voice is the polished, measured tone of someone who has had media training. "We have a standard of clientele here. I'm sure you can appreciate that." Darius says nothing. She continues. The silence seems to energize her. "I don't know what brought you in here today, but this isn't a place where people just wander in off the street. The lobby is not a waiting area for the public." She pauses. "Whatever you thought this was, it isn't." He is watching the dust in the air. Tiny particles suspended in the beam of morning light, coming through the glass panels, drifting in slow, aimless spirals that have nothing to do with the conversation happening beneath them. He counts 3 distinct shafts of light. He notes the position of the overhead cameras, 2 covering the east wall, 1 angled on the elevator bank. He listens to the exact cadence of her voice and files it away. Vivian takes his silence as provocation. Her jaw tightens. She looks briefly at Zion, then back at Darius, and she crosses into territory she has no business entering. "What kind of example?" she says. "Do you think you're setting for that boy? Coming into a place like this, in that," she gestures vaguely at his work jacket, "and acting like you have business here. Children learn what they see, and what he's seeing right now is exactly why some cycles don't break." The lobby hums around them. The quartet upstairs has shifted to something slower. Somewhere near the revolving doors, a woman in heels has stopped pretending to look at her phone. Darius does not blink. He does not raise his voice. He does not shift his weight. He does not clench his jaw or ball his hands, or do any of the things a man might do when someone weaponizes his child against him in a public space. He stands exactly as he was standing, breathing at the same rate, his expression carrying something that is not quite calm and not quite amusement, but is entirely controlled. That stillness, that absolute, impenetrable stillness, is what finally cracks her composure. Vivian turns to Officer Marsh. Her voice drops half a degree in temperature. "Search his pockets," she says. "If he came in here, there's a reason. I want to know what he took." Marsh hesitates, just for a fraction of a second, but he follows the order, because she signs the building's security contract, and that is the weight that matters in this moment. His hand goes into Darius's left jacket pocket. His fingers close around something heavy, dense, and flat. He pulls it out. It is matte black and slightly thicker than a credit card. The surface is titanium. Embossed text runs across it, along with a holographic federal seal that catches the light and throws it back in sharp blue and gold. The color leaves Officer Marsh's face like water leaving a glass. Marsh stares at the card. He does not move. For 2 full seconds, the only sound in the immediate space is the low, ambient hum of the lobby's ventilation system and the distant, oblivious performance of the mezzanine quartet. Then something shifts in Marsh's body language. Not dramatically, not all at once, but like a load-bearing wall, quietly deciding it is on the wrong side. His partner, Officer DeLuca, leans over and reads the card. Then DeLuca straightens up the way a man straightens when he has just understood that the ground he is standing on belongs to someone else. The card is not a credit card. It is not a building access badge. It is a federal contractor security clearance identification. Level 8, issued by the Department of Defense, Division of Critical Infrastructure, and Defense Asset Review. The name on it is clean and precise: Darius A. Vance. Alongside it, a classification code that tells anyone in federal, law enforcement, or defense adjacent work exactly what level of access, authority, and proximity to classified infrastructure this man holds. Level 8 does not exist on the publicly known clearance scale, which tops out at level 5 for most federal contractors. Level 8 means something else entirely. It means the person holding it operates in spaces and frameworks that most government employees are not cleared to know about. Marsh knows this. DeLuca knows this. The two men exchange a look that takes less than a second and communicates everything. Vivian does not know this. She is watching from 3 feet away, arms still crossed, her impatience sharpened to a point. "Well," she says. "What is it? What did you find?" Marsh does not answer her right away. He turns the card over once, carefully, almost reverently, and then he looks at Darius, with an entirely different expression than the one he arrived with. It is not embarrassment. It is closer to the recognition a person feels when they realize they have been operating from a completely wrong set of assumptions, and that those assumptions have consequences. "Ma'am," Marsh says, and his voice has changed register. Quieter, more careful. "I need you to step back." Vivian blinks. "Excuse me? I need you to step back from this individual, please." She does not step back. She steps forward. "That is not your call to make. I am the executive authority in this building, and I am telling you to—" "Ma'am." Marsh says it again, and this time it is not a request. It is a wall. He positions himself slightly between her and Darius, not aggressively, but with the clarity of a man who has just recalculated everything and chosen the only correct option available to him. He turns back to Darius. He reaches for the cuffs. His hands are not entirely steady. The steel opens. It pulls back from Darius's wrists with the same metallic click that put it there, except this click sounds completely different. This one sounds like a mistake being acknowledged. Darius rolls his left wrist slowly, then his right. He does not say anything. He does not look at Marsh with anger or satisfaction. He simply stands straighter, the way a man stands when something unnecessary has finally been removed from him. And then Officer Kendall Marsh does something that causes every person within sightline to freeze. He steps back. He plants his feet at shoulder width. And he brings his right hand up to his brow in a sharp, clean, formal salute. The kind that does not belong to building security protocol. The kind that belongs to a different world entirely. A world of rank and earned authority, and things that do not get explained in lobbies. He holds it. The lobby goes breathless. A woman near the concierge desk stops mid-sentence. A man by the elevator banks lowers his phone. Even the soft sound of professional footfall on polished stone seems to pause, as if the building itself is waiting to understand what it is witnessing. Vivian's arms drop from her chest. She looks at Marsh. She looks at DeLuca, who has taken 2 steps back and is studying the floor with great concentration. She looks at the card, still in Marsh's other hand. Matte black titanium. Federal seal catching the light. A name she did not bother to ask before she ordered this man detained. Her mouth opens. Nothing comes out. This is new. Vivian Castagno-White has navigated board hostilities, federal bid negotiations, investor collapses, and media crises. She has never, in 22 years of executive leadership, stood in her own lobby and felt the architecture of her authority fall out from underneath her in real time. She reaches for something to say, something sharp, something executive, something that puts her back at the center of this moment. Darius does not give her the time. He reaches out and takes the card from Marsh's hand with the casual ease of someone retrieving a business card from a coat pocket. He tucks it back into his jacket. He glances over his shoulder at Zion, who is still standing against the east wall, watching everything with enormous, quiet eyes. Then he turns and looks directly at Vivian Castagno-White for the first time since she walked out of that elevator. His voice, when it comes, is soft, conversational, almost gentle. "Are you finished?" he says. "Or would you like to dig this hole a little deeper?" She opens her mouth. She closes it. That is the whole answer. That is what 22 years of executive posture produces when the floor drops out. A mouth that opens, then closes, and produces nothing. Vivian Castagno-White, CEO of the Castagno Group, the woman who signed the leases on 6 floors of the most prestigious commercial tower in the city, stands in the center of her own lobby and cannot locate a single word. Darius holds her gaze for 3 more seconds. Then he looks away. Not in defeat, in dismissal. He turns to Marsh and gives a single, slow nod. Not a thank you, not a performance, just an acknowledgement, the kind exchanged between people who understand that this situation has run its course and requires nothing further. Marsh steps aside. DeLuca, who has been gradually increasing the distance between himself and Vivian since the moment the card came out, does not look up. Darius takes 2 steps toward the east wall and extends his right hand. Zion takes it. The boy's fingers wrap around his father's palm and grip with the full strength of his small hand, and the two of them turn toward the revolving glass doors at the building's entrance. Vivian finds something to say. It arrives late and lands wrong. "Those officers will hear from my legal team," she says to the empty space where Marsh was standing. "You don't get to undermine my authority in my own building." That card doesn't change what happened here. Nobody responds, not because they agree, because they are all, individually, doing the math on how badly this has already gone, and choosing to stop adding to the total. Darius does not turn around. He does not break stride. He walks through the revolving door with his son's hand in his, and the city swallows them both. The neon and glass world outside the Meridian Plaza, loud and moving, and indifferent to everything that just happened in that lobby. He does not reach for his phone to make calls. He does not stop on the steps to compose himself or process what just occurred. He buys Zion a hot chocolate from the cart on the corner of 5th and Aldrin, and they walk together down the sidewalk. 2 people with somewhere else to be. True power, the kind that has been tested and held under real pressure, does not need to announce itself. It does not perform for lobbies or cameras, or the satisfaction of watching someone else crumble in real time. It moves forward. It waits. It works from positions that the arrogant never think to guard because they never imagined anyone else standing in them. Darius already knows what comes next. He has always known. The moment in that lobby was not a confrontation. It was a data collection event. He memorized the angles of the cameras. He noted the names on the officers' badges. He logged the cadence of Vivian's voice, the specific language she used, the moment she chose to invoke his son. He filed every detail in the same part of his mind that once cataloged enemy positions in terrain, where one missed detail meant you did not come home. He is not angry. Anger is a resource, and he does not waste resources. Meanwhile, on the 43rd floor, Vivian's private elevator carries her back up to her corner office. She sits behind her desk. She pours 2 fingers of water from the crystal pitcher on her credenza. Her hands, she notices, are not entirely steady. She sets the glass down. She opens her laptop. She tells herself, quietly but firmly, that she handled an irregularity, and her protocols were correct, and the building standards are hers to set and enforce. She tells herself this 3 times. Then her desk phone rings. The number on the screen belongs to her chief financial officer, Marcus Whitfield. He never calls her on the desk line unless something is wrong. She picks up. His voice is 3 tones higher than normal, stretched thin at the top the way voices get when someone is trying to contain something large. "Vivian," he swallows. "Our federal defense contract, the Meridian bid, it just went into emergency review." She leans forward. "What?" "They flagged it 20 minutes ago. And the name of the federal auditor listed on the review file is..." He stops. He seems to need a second. Darius Vance. 6 months is a long time when you are losing and do not know the shape of what is taking you apart. Vivian does not lose things. That is the fact she returns to, again and again, in the weeks following the Meridian bid collapse. She does not lose contracts. She does not lose investors. She does not lose ground in markets she has spent 2 decades cultivating, client relationships she has maintained through recessions and regulatory shifts, and 2 hostile acquisition attempts that both failed. She is the woman who holds things together. That is her whole identity, constructed and reinforced and maintained at significant personal cost. And for 6 months it is quietly, methodically, and completely dismantled. It begins with the Meridian contract. Emergency review becomes indefinite. Suspension becomes formal withdrawal, all within 11 days of that morning in the lobby. The Federal Contracting Office cites procedural irregularities in the proposal submission process, language so deliberately vague it gives her legal team nothing to push against. They push anyway. Nothing moves. Then Garrison Capital, a private equity group that has been in the Castaño Group's corner for 4 years, quietly declines to renew their letter of intent for the upcoming fiscal cycle. Their representative sends an email, not a call, an email, professional, brief, and final. 2 weeks later, a mid-tier institutional investor named Brightwell Partners reduces their stake by 40% in a transaction that processes overnight. The kind of move that is technically unremarkable and practically devastating because of what it signals to everyone else watching the portfolio boards. They are all watching the portfolio boards. Vivian hires 2 separate consulting firms to identify the source of the pattern. Both produce reports that point to market uncertainty, regulatory environment shifts, and routine portfolio rebalancing. Both are wrong, but they cannot tell her that, because neither one has the right visibility into what is actually happening beneath the surface. What is happening beneath the surface is this. A venture capital firm called Vance Capital Management has been acquiring the Castaño Group's corporate debt in tranches through a series of shell holding companies with names like Northbridge Equity Advisors, Caldwell Asset Group, and Prentice Mora Capital Partners. Each acquisition is individually small enough to avoid triggering mandatory disclosure thresholds. Collectively, they add up to something that, if Vivian could see the full picture, would stop her cold. She cannot see the full picture. That is the architecture of it. Each piece, placed precisely far enough from the others that no single analyst or legal team, looking at any one position, can identify the pattern connecting them. It is the kind of financial orchestration that requires patience, precision, and access to resources that only a certain category of person can mobilize. The category that Vivian decided, in 30 seconds in a lobby, that Darius Vance did not belong to. By month 4, she begins to look tired. Not in ways the public notices. She is still composed in earnings calls, still sharp in board briefings, still the version of herself that everyone in the room expects to see. But her assistant, Renata Osei, notices the small things. The second cup of coffee she never used to need, the way she sometimes sits at her desk and stares at the credenza for 30 seconds before picking up the next file. The fact that she has stopped taking lunch calls from the investors she once considered reliable. Renata does not ask. She has worked for Vivian long enough to know that asking is not part of her job description. In month 5, a board member named Theodore Park sends Vivian a private message through the company's encrypted internal communication platform. It contains 4 words. Have you checked Obsidian? Vivian has not checked Obsidian. She did not need to check Obsidian, because Obsidian Holdings appeared in her inbox 6 weeks earlier as a solution, not a problem. A shadow equity firm offering a substantial short-term loan at favorable rates, with a restructuring timeline that, on paper, gives the Castaño Group exactly the runway it needs to stabilize before the next fiscal quarter. The terms are clean. The rates are competitive. The collateral structure is standard. Vivian's legal team reviews the contract for 3 days. They flag 2 provisions as standard boilerplate requiring minor negotiation. They do not flag the morals and conduct clause embedded in Schedule D, subsection 4, paragraph 9, not because they are incompetent, but because it is written in the exact language that a very specific type of legal mind knows how to make look routine. Vivian signs the contract on a Thursday afternoon. She feels, for the first time in months, like solid ground has appeared beneath her feet. She pours herself a glass of water. She sits back in her chair. She looks out over the city from her 43rd floor window and allows herself 30 seconds of something that feels almost like relief. In a glass-walled office 17 blocks north, Darius Vance receives a notification on his phone. He reads it once. He sets the phone face down on the desk. The loan has been approved, and the clock Vivian just started does not run in her favor. What would you have done if you were Darius? Walked away, or played the long game? Tell me in the comments. The board is already seated when Vivian walks through the door, and that one fact dismantles everything before she says a word. In 15 years of running this company, the board has never been in their chairs before she enters the room. Not once. She calls the meetings, she controls the agenda, she owns the rhythm of every conversation that takes place inside these mahogany walls, from the first item on the docket to the final handshake. That is not policy. That is Vivian's personal architecture of authority. and it has held without exception for a decade and a half. Today, all 7 members are present, seated, and watching the door. Theodore Park, the board chairman, sits at the far end with both hands flat on the polished surface in front of him. His standard opener, the weather observation, the coffee offer, the brief collegial check-in that signals everyone is still on the same team, does not come. Beside him, Constance Maquela Hughes, the company's legal liaison, has a thick stack of documents in front of her that she stopped pretending to review long before Vivian arrived. Reginald Okafor, representing the largest remaining institutional stakeholder in the portfolio, sits with his arms folded and his jaw set in the particular expression of a man who has extended patience past its limit and will not extend it further. Vivian takes her chair at the head of the table. She does not rush. She sets her leather portfolio on the surface, uncaps her pen, and reads the room with the composed, measured expression she has held through 17 separate versions of corporate crisis over a 20-year executive career. Whatever this is, she begins, I want to address it directly. Obsidian Holdings called in the loan. Park says it flat and clean. Before she can finish, she holds very still. The restructuring timeline isn't, they cited a breach. Constance slides a document across the table without standing, without preamble, without the professional softening she would normally wrap around news this severe. A morals and conduct breach. Schedule D, subsection 4. The clause was triggered by the release of a security recording. A pause that takes up real space in the room. The recording is from the Meridian Plaza lobby, 6 months ago. Not one person at the table makes a sound. Vivian opens the document to page 3. A security camera still image fills the top half of the page in sharp, complete resolution. Timestamp, 9:47 a.m. She is in frame, arms crossed, chin elevated, standing 3 feet from a man in a gray work jacket, whose wrists are restrained in front of him. A small boy with a backpack stands against the east wall behind him. The camera angle captures her expression with a precision that leaves nothing open to alternate interpretation. The satisfaction is there. The decision is there. Every element of it, documented and printed, and placed on the table in front of 7 people whose judgment determines whether this company clears the next 30 days. Vivian closes the document. Without the Obsidian loan, Okafor says, and his voice carries no heat, because heat would imply there is still something worth arguing about. The company cannot service its outstanding debt. Every stakeholder in this room takes damage. I understand the math, Vivian says. Do you? He leans forward 2 inches. Because the math says, the person running this company triggered a conduct breach while pursuing a federal contract that was already under review. The math does not account for intentions. It only accounts for outcomes. Vivian sets her pen down. She reads the room, face by face, the way she has read rooms her entire career, calculating positions and leverage and the moves available. What she finds is not anger. She knows how to handle boardroom anger. What she finds instead is the settled, immovable quiet of people who arrived at this meeting having already processed the ending and are now simply waiting for her to arrive at the same conclusion they reached without her. The CEO of Obsidian Holdings, Park says, choosing each word with visible care, has requested a meeting, today, to discuss the company's position going forward. Vivian nods. I'll take that meeting myself. I've navigated harder negotiations than... The meeting is already arranged. Park looks at the frosted glass panel beside the boardroom door. They're in the anteroom right now. Through the frosted glass, a figure stands on the other side. Tall, completely still, not pacing, not checking a phone, just standing with the patience of someone who has never once doubted how this ends. 8 times Park folds his hands. Vivian. He exhales carefully. Before they come in, do you know who actually owns Obsidian Holdings? Something large and quiet begins to move inside her chest. No, she says. I don't. The boardroom door opens. Light comes in first. The heavy oak panels swing open, and morning light pours through the gap, cutting across the mahogany table in a long, hard diagonal that splits the room cleanly in 2. Half the board in sharp relief, the other half pulled into softer shadow. The contrast is immediate and complete, as if the room has reorganized its geometry around whatever is entering. Then the silhouette appears, It takes Vivian's mind 2 full seconds to process what her eyes are delivering, and those 2 seconds are the most isolating of her professional life. The man in the doorway is not wearing a gray work jacket. He is wearing a charcoal suit, single-breasted, hand-tailored, fabric cut to a specific body by someone whose work leaves nothing approximate. No pocket square, no decorative detail of any kind, nothing that performs. His posture is identical to what it was 6 months ago on the lobby floor, straight, unhurried, carrying the settled weight of someone who has never, not once, needed to persuade a room that he belongs inside it. Darius Vance walks through the boardroom door. Every member of the Castagno Group board stands up, not in the shuffling, uncertain way people rise when they are caught off guard, in the collective, synchronized way that people rise when they know exactly who has entered and what that presence requires. Theodore Park is on his feet. Constance Maquela Hughes is on her feet. Reginald Okafor, who has not stood from a board chair out of anything but personal choice in over a decade, is on his feet. All 7 members, upright and still, their attention organized around a single point in the room. Vivian does not stand. Her legs make the decision, which is no decision at all. She grips both armrests and watches Darius cross the room with a steady, even stride, and she watches the board. These 7 people whose professional confidence she has spent 20 years cultivating, managing, and carefully protecting, watch him with a quality of attention she has never once received from this table with this particular clarity. The realization does not arrive as a thought. It arrives as a physical event, moving through her chest and settling in her stomach, with the cold, specific weight of something released from a significant height. This man, the one she scanned from across her lobby and found immediately and entirely dismissible, whose gray work jacket she registered as all the evidence she needed, whose son she looked at and set aside in the same casual motion she would use to step past an inconvenience. This man, standing here now in a room where 7 professionals are on their feet, owns the debt that was supposed to save her. He owns the firm that extended that loan. He owns, in every financial and legal sense that functions in the real world, the ground this building is constructed on. Darius reaches the far end of the table. He does not move directly to the chair. He greets Theodore Park with a handshake. Solid, brief. The handshake of 2 people who have operated in the same professional orbit long enough that the gesture means something genuine. He acknowledges Constance with a nod. He looks at Reginald Okafor, and Okafor holds his gaze for a second and nods back with the small, weighted expression of a man who has known this moment was coming and made no effort to prevent it. Then Darius reaches for the chair at the head of the table. Her chair, the one she has occupied at the opening of every board meeting for 12 consecutive years. The seat that is, in every symbolic and functional sense available to a person, the position from which this company has always been directed. He pulls it out. He sits. He sets both hands flat on the table in front of him, fingers lightly spread, completely at ease, the way a man settles into a chair that has always, in every version of the future he planned for, carried his name. The board takes their seats around him. Silence. Not the empty kind, the full kind, carrying the weight of what just shifted, and the collective understanding that this shift is not temporary. A cloud moves past the windows above the city line. The diagonal beam of light narrows across the mahogany surface, thins, and disappears, leaving the whole room in the same flat, even exposure. Vivian becomes aware that her hands are pressing into the armrests hard enough that the effort is visible. She releases them, places both in her lap, looks up. Darius is looking at her, not with triumph, not with anger, not with the loud, demonstrative satisfaction she would have felt in his position, that she would have allowed herself to display and enjoy. His expression holds something closer to the deep, anchored patience of a person who mapped this destination months ago and has simply been moving toward it ever since, at a pace that no one else in the room understood until right now. He steeples his fingers. The room holds its breath. "I believe," Darius Vance says, in the same soft, unhurried voice he used 6 months ago on this building's lobby floor, with his wrists in steel cuffs and his son standing 4 feet behind him, "that you had some concerns about who belongs in this building." He does not look away. The words stand exactly as they are, complete, precise, and carrying every weight that needs to be carried, including the version of this moment that a less disciplined man would have turned into a demolition. Darius delivers it as a single, clean sentence. Vivian's mouth opens. It closes. For the second time in 6 months, in the same building, in front of people who are watching, she cannot produce a single word. He does not open with an accusation. That is what the room expects. Every board member, and Vivian, and the building's legal counsel standing near the rear wall, are all braced for the same thing. The moment when the controlled composure gives way, and what is underneath it finally surfaces. 6 months of precision and patience revealing itself as fury. The hammer they all know is coming, dropping in whatever form it chooses to take. Darius does not give them that. He opens a single manila folder, removes 3 printed pages, and lays them on the table in front of him, with the deliberate, unhurried attention of a man giving a presentation he prepared 6 months ago and has been waiting, specifically, for this room to be ready to receive. The Meridian bid, he begins, his voice at the same measured volume he used in the lobby below, required a security response stress evaluation, standard language for any defense-adjacent federal contract. Specifically, how building personnel respond to individuals who do not visually match the expected clientele profile. He looks at the board, not at Vivian. Not yet. That evaluation was mandatory before any bid could advance past the preliminary consideration stage. Theodore Park's expression shifts. You were conducting the evaluation. I was the evaluation, Darius says without inflection. My presence in this lobby, in a gray work jacket, with my 9-year-old son, at 9:47 on a Tuesday morning, was not incidental. It was the protocol. And this building failed that protocol in 11 minutes. The room takes this in. Constance Maquela Hughes opens her mouth, closes it. Reginald Okafor sets both forearms on the table and looks at the center of the surface without blinking. Vivian stares at Darius. When she speaks, her voice is flat. You set me up. I administered a federal security evaluation, he says. There is a documented distinction between those two things. He turns a page. The first failure indicator was not the call to security. Building personnel have discretion to approach individuals in unauthorized areas. That is within the protocol. He looks up. The failure was the absence of a question. In 11 minutes, not one building representative asked me who I was, why I was there, or who I was there to see. The response moved directly from visual identification to physical detention. That is a protocol failure with federal liability implications, and it is recorded in the evaluation report. He turns to the second page. The second failure indicator was the verbal conduct during the detention. He still does not look at Vivian. He speaks to the record, the way a person speaks when they understand that the record is what matters, and the room is secondary. A building representative made direct reference to a minor who was present. That falls into a separate and more serious liability category. It is documented. 3 of you have already received that portion of the federal review file. 3 of the 7 board members do not look surprised. The other 4 do. Vivian leans forward. Her voice finds a new register, not the executive tone she walked in with, not composure, but something beneath both of those, rawer and less managed. I built this company, 12 years in that chair. You think 20 minutes in a lobby. 22 minutes, Darius says. She stops. The entire event, from the moment you stepped off your elevator to the moment I walked through the front door, was 22 minutes. He closes the folder. 22 minutes was enough to collapse a federal contract, trigger a debt cascade, activate a conduct clause, and end a 12-year tenure. He looks at her directly for the first time since he sat down. That is not what I did to you. That is what you built. I waited for it to appear. The silence in the room is complete. Vivian sits back. Her posture, which has held for this entire meeting, with the rigid precision of someone refusing to be seen breaking, gives half an inch. Just half. But everyone at the table sees it. She tries anyway. Because there is one move remaining and she takes it. I'll resign, she says. Her voice stays controlled, but it costs her something visible to keep it that way. Severance package intact. I walk out of this room and you get a clean transition. That works for everyone. Darius does not move. Your shares are worthless, he says. The debt acquisition absorbed them as collateral in month 3. The severance you're referencing was funded by equity that no longer exists. A pause that is not dramatic, just factual. There is no golden parachute, Vivian. The only exit available to you is the one I'm offering. She looks at him. Her jaw is tight. Her eyes hold something she has never had to carry in a professional setting. A clear, unobstructed view of the distance between where she believed she stood and where she has actually been standing this whole time. "What exit?" she says. Darius reaches into the folder. He removes a single sheet of paper, crisp, white, no letterhead, and slides it across the mahogany surface toward her. It travels the length of the table and stops directly in front of her hands. "I'm not firing you," he says. "I have a different reassignment in mind." Vivian reads the paper. She reads it twice, because the first time her eyes move across the text without the words fully landing, the way a person reads language that doesn't match the shape of any outcome they prepared for. The second time, she reads every word. The room stays completely still. No one at the board table speaks. No one shifts or checks a phone or makes any of the small, restless movements that people make when they are uncomfortable with silence. They watch Vivian read, and they wait. The overhead lighting holds everything in flat, even exposure, and the only sound is the low, mechanical breath of the building's ventilation somewhere above the ceiling panels. The document runs 2 pages. Page 1 outlines her new employment agreement under the company's revised ownership and leadership structure. 40 hours per week, standard benefit package, no executive authority, no discretionary power over personnel, clientele, building access, or operations of any kind. Page 2 specifies the assignment: lobby security operations, graveyard shift, the Meridian Plaza building, ground floor. Effective the first Monday of the following month. She will stand behind the lobby desk. She will check credentials, sign in visitors, hold packages, monitor the camera feeds on a rotation schedule, and open the door for the people who arrive before the rest of the building wakes up. The role she has walked past for 12 years. Every morning, every evening, every time she stepped out of her private elevator, without ever learning the name of the person filling it. If she refuses to sign, if she resigns at any point, the personal loans she took against her company equity, loans that were absorbed into the debt acquisition along with everything else, default immediately. The resulting personal bankruptcy is not a process or a negotiation. It is automatic. It is documented. It erases every financial buffer that currently separates her from starting over with nothing, including the reputation and the network and the 2 decades of carefully built professional identity that she has treated, for most of her career, as permanent. Darius lets her sit with the document for exactly as long as she needs. He does not fill the silence. He does not explain further or soften the language or add any commentary to what the pages already state with complete clarity. He has the patience of someone who drafted every word of this agreement months ago. Who knew its exact contents before it was printed? Who built each clause from the ground up so that this moment, Vivian holding 2 pages, the board watching, the table between them catching the flat overhead light, would arrive precisely like this, with no room to maneuver anywhere inside it? "You want me," Vivian says, and her voice breaks on the second word, and she pulls it back together and finishes. "To work the lobby desk." "The position is standing," Darius says. There's a protocol. No one at the table responds. The statement lands in the silence, and stays exactly where it lands. Vivian looks up from the paper. She reads the board one more time, face by face, the same instinct she has relied on her entire career. What she finds is the same thing she has been finding since she walked through the door. The quiet, settled weight of people who believe that what is happening in this room is the correct result of the sequence of events that preceded it. She looks at Darius. "You could have exposed me immediately," she says. 6 months ago, right there in the lobby. You had the clearance. You had the authority. You could have ended everything that morning. "Yes," he says. "Why didn't you?" He considers this, not because the answer requires thought, but because she has earned the right to hear it stated with full clarity. "Ruining someone in a lobby is a reaction," he says. "What I built over 6 months is a record. The difference between those 2 things matters more than most people understand." Vivian looks at the paper for a long time. Then she picks up her pen, the one she brought into this meeting. The one she set down when she stopped being able to pretend she controlled anything happening in this room. She signs her name at the bottom of page 2. Her hand is not entirely steady. The letters are slightly uneven. A single drop lands outside the signature line and blooms into the paper's fiber in a small, dark circle. Her tears are falling before she finishes writing her last name. The revolving door opens, and the building exhales. That is the only way to describe it. The specific quality of the air, and the light that greets Darius when he steps through the glass panels of the Meridian Plaza for the second time in 6 months. The first time, this building felt like a statement, something heavy and closed and decided. Today it is just a building. High ceilings, polished stone, chrome fixtures catching midday light and moving it across the floor in long, clean strips. The same architecture, the same materials, the same 43 floors stacked above the lobby. The wait is simply gone. Zion is waiting on the front steps. He is taller than he was 6 months ago, not dramatically, but enough that Darius sees it in the way his son's shoulders have begun to carry themselves slightly differently, like a person just starting to understand what their own posture says about them. Zion still has his backpack on. He is looking out at the street with the patient, observant expression he has inherited without either of them ever discussing it. The look of someone who understands that things arrive in their own time, and that watching is not the same as being passive. He hears the door and turns. Darius comes down the front steps. He loosens the top button of his shirt as he steps into the open air. That single, small adjustment, the movement of a man returning to himself after hours of precision. And it is the only external acknowledgement he gives to everything that just concluded inside. He stands beside his son. They look at the street together. Neither one speaks for a moment. "Did it go how you planned?" Zion asks. Darius watches the traffic move. A delivery truck stops at the corner and blocks the lane, and the cars behind it shift and find other paths forward the way they always do, because the city does not pause for individual obstacles. It just reroutes. "It went how it needed to," he says. Zion nods, the nod of a 9-year-old who does not fully understand the answer but has learned, from experience, to trust the person giving it. "Are we good?" Darius puts his hand on his son's shoulder. "We've always been good." They walk together down the steps and onto the sidewalk, and the Meridian Plaza rises behind them. 43 floors of glass and concrete and recessed lighting, and the quiet, expensive certainty of a place that once decided, in 30 seconds and without a single question, who had the right to stand inside it. On the ground floor, behind the lobby desk, Vivian Castaño White stands in a standard-issue gray security uniform. Her dark hair, which 6 months ago was pinned with the precision of someone whose appearance was a daily professional instrument, is pulled back with a plain elastic band. She watches the lobby entrance. She checks credentials. She holds packages for the tenants upstairs. She nods at the people who pass through without looking at her, which is most of them, because that is how lobbies work. People do not look at the desk. They look at where they are going. When the revolving door turns and Darius and Zion move through the lobby, heading for the bank of elevators, heading for the offices on the upper floors that now carry his name on the lease, she straightens behind the desk. Her hands, resting flat on the surface, tighten briefly. Father and son cross the lobby floor without breaking stride, without looking at the desk, without any indication that they are aware of the woman standing 3 feet to their left in a uniform that fits the way all standard-issue uniforms fit, which is to say, it fits no one in particular. They do not look back. They do not need to. What Darius Vance understood, what the 6 months of quiet, exacting work was built on top of, is that dignity is not assigned by buildings or titles or the people who control access to both. It belongs to the person who never let go of it, not when the steel closed around their wrists, not when their son was watching, not when a woman in a navy suit looked at them and decided the answer in 30 seconds without asking a single question. That answer, it turned out, was not hers to give. If this story moved you, if it said something you needed to hear today, share it with someone who needs to hear it too. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell us what you would have done in Darius's position. Your voice matters here, and this community grows because people like you choose to be part of it. Subscribe and turn on your notifications. Every week we bring you stories that challenge what you assume, demand better of all of us, and remind you that the world has a long memory and an even longer sense of justice. Do not miss what comes next.